Hello, folks, and welcome. This is Dan from Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today I'm going to be doing an overview of Pandemic. In the game of Pandemic, the players represent agents of the Centers of Disease Control, globetrotting around the planet in an effort to cure virulent diseases in various regions. The goal of the game is to find cures for all four of the diseases that are on the map, each represented by a different color, before you hit a loss condition. And like many cooperative games, there are multiple loss conditions. The outbreaks over here can hit 8. The player draw pile, which I have not set up yet, can be depleted. If you're completely out of cards, it's a loss condition. If you have to put a cube on the table and can't, that is also a loss condition. I have already seeded the board with the initial disease cubes. This is done by just simply shuffling this deck and revealing cards. There's 3 cities out here that have 3 cubes, 3 cities that have 2 cubes, and 3 cities that have just 1 cube as the initial loadout. Players can be dealt randomly or pick unique player powers called roles. That looks fine to me. And players start in the city of Atlanta. You also have to set up the player deck at the beginning of the game. Do this by taking the deck of location cards, dealing some number to each player based on how many players are in the game. For example, 4 cards at 2 player, but 3 cards at 3 player. I've randomly decided to set up a 3-player game. The rest of these cards are combined with the event cards, shuffled, and then you need to put them into 4 different stacks. Well, a number of different stacks. This is your difficulty. If you want to go on trainer mode, you'll use 3 of these epidemic cards. Normal is 4, and then you can include more if you need the additional challenge. But 1 epidemic card is added to each of these piles. The piles are shuffled, combined, and then that becomes the player deck that we will draw from. Decide who's going to go first among the players. On each player's turn, they will get to do 4 actions. At the end of their turn, they're going to have to draw 2 cards out of this deck and then do the infection phase. So, on each player's turn, they have 4 action points. You use these action points to move around, cure diseases, and set up research centers, which are these white houses. Moving from a city to a connected city is 1 point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's player's whole turn. If you have a city card in your hand, you could discard that card to fly to that city. So if I were the green player and I discarded Algiers, for 1 action point, I could fly out to Algiers. That would just be 1 AP to fly out. Other option of flying around the board is if you are in a city. So if I went 1, 2 points to get to New York, and I discarded the New York card, I can now fly from New York to anywhere I want. I could ship myself out here, for example, to help put out this fire. Another way you can move is if you're at a research station, you can fly to another research station for 1 action. At the beginning of the game, there's just 1 research station in Atlanta. and the players will have an opportunity to erect more as the game progresses. One of the possible actions you have available to you is Treat Disease. If Green discarded his Lima card to fly down here to Lima for his first action, his second action would be to Treat Disease. Each time you treat a disease, you remove 1 cube, unless you have discovered the cure, in which case you remove all the cubes in your current location. Another thing you could do as an action is called Share Knowledge. If you and another player are on the same city space, then you could spend an action to give that player a card that matches that city space, or take a card that matches that city space from a player. So, if I were a green player right now, I'm in New York, I can hand my New York card to the scientist over here. Whoop. Another thing you could do as an action is build a research center. If you are in a city, like White is in Istanbul right now, you could discard that city card and build a research station in that city. Another thing the players can try to do is, of course, discover a cure. Players need to discover a cure for each of the 4 diseases in order to be able to win the game. If you are in a city with a research station, you could spend one of your actions to discover cure. In order to discover a cure, you have to have 5 cards of the same color, and you discard all of them to discover the cure of that color. The scientist down here has a special ability that says they only need 4 cards to discover a cure. Scientists would discover a cure right now, they would discard all of these cards. We now have the cure for the blue disease. Discovering the cure for a disease does not remove any cubes from the table, but it does mean that the cure or treat action removes all the cubes in a city instead of just 1 cube per action. After each player has done their 4 actions, they draw 2 cards. The cards in the deck can come in the form of these city cards, which can help you move around the map or build research stations as you need, or these event cards, which you can play at any time to basically do the thing on the card. This is called Airlift. This is not an action. It says move any 1 pawn to any city. Please get permission before moving another player's pawn. The other thing that you do at the end of your turn is Infect New Cities. So you take a look at the infection rate marker. This starts down here. You can start it at a higher space if you want additional difficulty. But basically 2 cards are going to come out of this deck because that's where this token is right now. And then Karichi and the other card that I draw, San Paulo, will get disease cubes. And those go into the pile. It is possible at the end of your turn that when you're drawing cards, you run across one of these epidemic cards. When one of these epidemic cards is drawn, a couple things happen. One, the infection rate marker is moved forward 1 space, potentially increasing the number of cards that you draw out of this deck. You grab the bottom card of the infection deck, alt-right click on Tabletop Simulator. This card is a new outbreak. So London gets 3 cubes on it. This card is added to the discard pile. And then you intensify. The discard deck is shuffled. And then this pile is put on the top of the infection deck, so that the cities that were recently hit by infection will see more infection spreading upon them. Since this epidemic card happens when you are drawing cards, you still have to infect cities by revealing the top 2 cards of this deck and putting cubes on the table. In this case, 1 cube gets added to Osaka. Oh, and London got hit. So 3 cubes is the normal limit for a single color in a single city. There's currently 3 cubes in London. So when this happens, an outbreak occurs. All the cities adjacent to London get a cube of that color. And this counter goes up 1 space. So if you have 8 of these over the course of a game, you immediately lose. Just to cover this interesting situation, if... Where's Karichi? Karichi is here. Okay. If here we see Jakarta has 3 cubes on it, so it will outbreak, right? Spreading cubes to each adjacent city. Even though Chennai here is a black city, it does still get a red cube from Jakarta outbreaking. A city may have cubes of multiple colors on it, but it can only have 3 cubes of the same color on it. It is within the realm of possibility that a chain reaction can occur. Say there's 3 cubes in New York here and 3 cubes in Washington, and we happened to draw the New York card. We have to add a cube to New York, but we can't because New York already has 3 cubes. So we outbreak and add a cube to London, Madrid, Montreal, and Washington. But Washington can't take a cube because it already has 3 cubes. So it outbreaks to Montreal, Atlanta, and Miami. This does not chain react further. So once New York outbreaks once, it doesn't outbreak again when Washington tries to put a cube on it. But that is 2 outbreaks and a lot of cubes on the table. So it is definitely a difficult situation to be in. The players may wish to pursue eliminating a disease. To eliminate a disease, you have to first find the cure, and second, remove all the cubes of that color from the map by going to those cities and treating the disease. If both of those things happen, then the disease has been wiped out. In this case, I wiped out the yellow disease, and all yellow cards that would come out of the infection deck during the infection phase that happens after each player's turn would basically not add cubes to the table. They would be dead cards. It does take additional time and effort to eliminate a disease, and you do not need to eliminate diseases to win the game. You simply need to find 4 cures. 1 cure for each disease. That is Pandemic in a nutshell, folks. Once again, if the player draw pile runs out, outbreaks hits 8, or the players need to put a cube representing disease on the table and they can't, the players collectively will lose the game. Otherwise, if they manage to find all 4 cures, they collectively win the game. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If I made an error, left something out, goofed up somehow, please write a comment down below. I love learning games, but we all learn better when we learn together. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you would like, do the YouTube things. Like the video, or subscribe to the channel. You can also check the links. See you around.